I'm in my zone.
Hey, this is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and I'm bringing you guys a review for the PlayStation 3 version of Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And around this time last year, I was trading in the original Black Ops for a used copy of the Simpsons video game that I still own that released back in 2008 because I just wasn't that impressed with the first Black Ops. And when someone mentions the Call of Duty franchise to me, my first initial thoughts are about its multiplayer, the constant respawning and spewing of bullets with teeny boppers, having screaming matches on camping lag, and everything in between. The last thing I think about with a game like this is its single player and co-op options. But this new title crams so many modes and new features down your throat, it's very hard not to take notice of how many upgrades this title is hiding. So the question I'm going to be addressing in this review is, if you don't like the chaotic online scene, is this game worth purchasing and playing for the other modes that it offers? Let's find out in the review. When you compare this title to other big-name shooters out there such as Battlefield and Ghost Recon, you can tell that it's a step behind in the graphics category. This title looks a lot like the last Black Ops, but it does sport a much nicer looking HUD, and a lot more detail was placed in the environment itself. During the cutscenes you can see a lot of emotion in the character facial animations, but the character body movement can seem a little stiff. As far as frame rate, the only time I ever noticed a dip or technical issue was playing in 4-player split-screen local co-op in the zombie transit mode. It seemed like there was just a bit too much going on for the engine to handle, as there was some considerable slowdown in certain portions. But every single other mode, including 4-player split-screen regular multiplayer, ran great. Playing by myself online and testing on 4 separate days this week all resulted in great experiences, with the exception of some downtime during a maintenance that took place one day to fix a few issues. I personally didn't see any lag or issues that made me want to do a double take at the screen. The hit detection seemed good, and the servers seemed to be up to the task of supporting the massive online player base on day one. Unlike some other major shooters that released over the last year, this one hit the ground running with hardly any speed bumps in the way. If I had to describe the story in one word, it would be gritty. This game is filled with graphic, bloodthirsty cutscenes to help portray a more realistic and emotional storyline filled with its fair share of choices and twists. This is also the first Call of Duty title to feature a branching storyline with multiple endings, which should help the replay value for those going after trophies and harder difficulty playthroughs. And the choices you make in the missions aren't always the easiest to decide. The plot and the script of the dialogue were both intense and should please even the pickiest of shooter fans out there. The story itself is the standard save the world riffraff, but the actual storytelling brings everything to life, and it's one of the few times I can say that a first-person shooter had a story worth paying attention to. No complaints with this category. Modes, and more modes. I've never seen a shooter with this many quality-filled modes. You're essentially getting 3 games packaged into one, and even those 3 games branch out by sporting more upgrades than anything that's been seen in a previous Call of Duty title. You still have the zombies, which can be played solo, local co-op, or online, and there are multiple different modes found inside just this section of the game. You have the tried and true survival with a few other decent options to play in, but the main focus here is going to be the new transit mode. You're basically transported from section to section on a bus, and you're on a timer to explore and gather supplies before the bus honks its horn and decides to leave with or without you on board. Then you have the single-player campaign with the addition of Strike Force missions. You take command of multiple soldiers and deployed equipment, such as drones and robotics, to complete objectives, and this was my favorite part of the single-player modes by far. You issue commands to your troops, and you can zip down to any soldier on the battlefield and take control of the situation. If that soldier dies, you switch to another unit. The success or failure of these missions have a direct impact on how the game ends, and you can also go back and replay them as much as you want. Finally, you have the multiplayer, sporting the most customization seen in a Call of Duty title to date. But more importantly, they've added league matches to help group players with similar skill levels up together, and the better that you do, the higher that you move up in the ladder. This completely changed how I looked at the Call of Duty multiplayer and really gives some purpose and incentive to play it beyond just unlocking new equipment or having the highest rank or the highest kill to death ratio. This is one feature that once you see it in action, you're going to have a hard time going back to any other type of online shooter that doesn't feature it. it. For the lone wolves out there that don't want to do clan wars, this part of the game should keep you playing long into the night. In my first impressions that I did for this game, I named off and explained a lot of the new features that this title holds, and it could quite honestly fill an entire review, just naming and explaining all of them off. But another feature that I need to mention is they've added the ability to directly live stream straight to your YouTube channel, and sharing your best highlights and clips in a theater mode is still there for the more traditional gamers out there. Codcasting has also been added to create your own commentary on your highlights, so expect to see a lot more random Call of Duty videos on YouTube. Now, to be honest, I wasn't the biggest Call of Duty fan before playing this game. In fact, I didn't even plan on covering this title, and it was kind of a last minute thing. But after spending a week on here, I definitely see what all the hype is about. This isn't just a good game for the multiplayer. It's a great game for whatever mode that you feel like playing that day. There were enough single player and co-op options to keep me busy every time that I cut the game on, and even after beating the story, I could see myself playing through it again and selecting different choices just to see how it plays out. The controls, which I haven't discussed in any other video yet, are some of the best that I've seen in a shooter, with player movement feeling solid and the aiming just as good. Overall, I really didn't have much to complain about other than the graphics being very similar to the last Black Ops, which some may not even have an issue with at all. This is the best shooter that's released this year, and I highly recommend it, even if you didn't like the previous Call of Duty titles. Anyways, this is Era at ReviewZoneHD, and thanks for stopping by.
Threat neutralized.